Imagine a state of being where you can achieve absolute success, experience total joy, and just, unlock pure, unfiltered freedom.
Right. Sounds like the dream.
It does, but there's a catch. And the catch is that you cannot actually exist to enjoy it.
Yeah, that is quite the catch.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a highly provocative 2024 essay by an author named Su Feng titled Selflessness is the Advanced State of Life.
It's a really fascinating piece of writing.
It really is. And our mission for this session is to completely unpack this counterintuitive, almost radical claim that deliberately losing your sense of self is, well, the ultimate life hack.
Yeah, and it's a fundamental paradox that challenges pretty much everything we are taught about, building an identity or finding yourself.
Exactly.
The author establishes this riddle from the very first lines. They say, the true self is found in selflessness. Hence, only through selflessness can the self be achieved.
Okay, let's unpack this because my brain immediately trips over that framing.
I don't blame you, it's dense.
Right, like how can a person possibly achieve something by completely obliterating the very thing they are trying to achieve?
Well, to understand the architecture of that paradox, we really have to look at how the text defines this advanced state of life.
Okay, laid out for us.
So the author uses these big terms like experiencing the blooming of divinity and entering the Elysium world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it describes a condition where the heart is entirely open and the spirit is just completely free.
Let's stop and unpack those terms before we go any further, because words like Elysium world and divinity are massive, lofty concepts.
They definitely carry a lot of baggage.
Yeah, what do they actually mean in the practical context of this essay? I mean, we aren't talking about Greek mythology or literal angels here, are we?
No, not at all. In the context of this text, the Elysium world isn't like a physical destination or an afterlife.
Right.
It's actually a psychological landscape. It represents a state of being where the boundaries between the individual and the universe simply evaporate.
So it's more about a state of mind?
Exactly. And divinity here refers to operating at a higher frequency of living, completely untethered from the friction of a personal ego.
Okay, so the author isn't talking about selflessness in the way we typically use the word on a Tuesday.
Definitely not.
This isn't about everyday charity, like volunteering at a soup kitchen or giving up your seat on the train. It's about accessing a completely different dimension of consciousness.
Yeah, that distinction is crucial. It's not a moral directive to be a good person.
Which is usually how we frame selflessness.
Right, but here it is presented as the absolute peak experience of human existence. It's a mechanical shift in how your brain interacts with reality.
Well, theory is fascinating, but a philosophy only really matters if it translates to how a human body feels in real time.
Absolutely.
So how does the author ground this lofty idea of the Elysium world in physical reality? Because the text doesn't just leave us up in the clouds.
No, it gets very specific.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It points to two intensely physical and intellectual human experiences to illustrate this mechanism.
And they are jarringly different.
Extremely. Nobel Prize winners and the experience of a sexual climax.
It is a brilliant juxtaposition, really, because it forces the reader to look for a hidden commonality between two seemingly opposite ends of the human spectrum.
I have to ask, though, wait, so a brilliant scientist calculating in a sterile lab and someone experiencing a physical climax are supposedly tapping into the exact same mechanism of no self?
That's the argument.
Because on the surface, one is pure calculating intellect and the other is pure biological instinct.
What's fascinating here is the underlying through line the author draws. Let's start with the climax example.
Okay.
The text argues that during that specific peak moment, an individual completely transcends conventional physical sensation.
Right. The rest of the world fades away.
Exactly. The awareness of the physical room, the surrounding scene, literally vanishes. They enter what the author describes as a non-material spiritual world.
The text mentions stepping into a state of infinite beauty.
Yes. And the engine driving that transition is the complete forgetting of the I.
So the ego just turns off.
Totally. During that peak experience, there is no ego narrating the event. There is no self-consciousness thinking, I am doing this, or worrying about how they look.
It is pure, unadulterated experience.
Right. And the author poses a profound philosophical question here. If the self is completely forgotten, yet there is still an experience of infinite beauty taking place, who or what is actually experiencing it?
That's a wild thought. And the text's answer is the true self.
Yes, exactly.
The true self only steps forward when the everyday anxious ego gets out of the way. But how does that same mechanical process map onto a Nobel laureate?
Well, think about the mechanics of a profound intellectual breakthrough.
Okay.
The author posits that anyone who has uncovered the deep mysteries of the universe must have, at some point, entered a profound state of self-forgetfulness.
To access what the text calls spiritual light.
Exactly. You can't reach that depth with your ego chattering away.
I can see how that works, actually. If a brilliant mathematician's brain is occupied with thoughts like, how will this discovery boost my personal brand? Or, I hope my rival sees this, they aren't fully present with the equation.
The ego acts as a bottleneck.
Yeah, you have to remove the bottleneck to let the universe's data flow through uninterrupted.
So the scientist in the lab and the lover in the bedroom are both, for a fleeting moment, completely losing their self-identity to merge with something larger.
It's crazy to think about those two states being so fundamentally similar.
It really is. The phenomenon tells us that to find the ultimate truth, whether that truth is an elegant mathematical formula or a moment of pure bliss, the intellect must bypass the ego entirely.
So if abandoning the self works in these extreme peak moments, how does it apply to the rest of our lives?
That's the logical next step.
Because the author takes this mechanism and applies it to our daily skills, our organizational structures, and personal philosophies through what we might call the without principle.
Right. The text introduces this great list of contradictions to illustrate the point.
Like the swordsman.
Yes. The most exquisite swordsmanship is without a sword. The most exquisite mental method is without a mind.
Sounds like a Zen koan.
It is very Zen. It also says the most exquisite management is no management. The most exquisite possession is non-possession.
And the most exquisite communication is Zen.
Exactly. It's about achieving the result by removing the forceful effort.
I want to pause on management is no management. Because if a modern executive hears that, their immediate reaction is going to be sheer panic.
Well, without a doubt.
Let's break down the mechanics of how an organization actually functions with zero management.
Well, the traditional concept of management relies on control and friction.
Lots of friction.
Right. A manager or a self imposes rules, monitors progress, and forces alignment to achieve a goal.
So what does no management look like then?
No management doesn't mean everyone just sits around staring at the wall in chaos. It refers to creating a system or a culture that is so perfectly aligned with the natural flow of the work that it governs itself.
It makes me think of an athlete, talking about being in the zone or playing completely on autopilot.
That's a great analogy.
Like the moment you actually think about what your hands are doing, you fumble the ball.
Yes. The conscious self gets in the way of the muscle memory.
But this text is applying that to literally everything we possess and do. It's like an intricate clockwork mechanism. If the gears are built and aligned perfectly, the watchmaker doesn't need to stand there physically turning the cogs with their fingers.
Their hands are completely out of it.
Yeah, the self of the watchmaker isn't interfering with the timekeeping.
That captures the essence perfectly. The text grounds this principle in Shakyamuni Buddha's guidance of no form of self, which it calls the highest subtle method.
To enter the Elysium world.
Exactly. If a leader removes their ego from the equation, meaning they aren't managing just to stroke their own importance or to assert dominance, the work organizes naturally.
The exquisite part comes from the complete lack of artificial interference.
It's the difference between trying to force a river to flow by pushing the water with your hands versus simply digging a clear channel and letting gravity do the work.
The pushing is the self.
And the gravity is the natural state.
And we can apply that same logic to possession as non-possession, right?
Yes, absolutely.
When your ego fiercely claims ownership of something, a house, a title, a relationship, you aren't really possessing it.
The fear of losing it begins to possess you.
Wow, yeah. True, exquisite possession only happens when you can enjoy something entirely without the anxious self clinging to it.
That's all about non-attachment.
Well, digging clear channels and living without clinging sounds beautiful in the abstract. But let's take this down from the Elysium world and put it under the harsh fluorescent lights of the modern office.
This is where it gets tough.
How does this philosophy hold up against the brutal practicality of daily life? The author brings up two very specific scenarios: the selfish coworker and the unreasonable patient.
These scenarios are where the text shifts from, transcendent philosophy to immediate psychological survival.
Let's look at the coworker first.
The text sets up a situation where you are forced to work with someone who is entirely focused on their own gain.
We all know the type.
Sadly, yes.
My natural instinct, and I think my ego's instinct, is to guard my boundaries. I want my fair share of the credit, and I don't want to be taken advantage of.
Which is completely normal.
Yeah.
But the text argues that your misery in that situation stems entirely from your own selfish calculations.
Really? Because I'm keeping a mental ledger of gains and losses.
Exactly.
Okay, here is where I have to challenge the text's advice directly. The text says if you achieve selflessness, you should just satisfy the selfish person's every desire and give all benefits to them to keep harmony.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
Doesn't that just mean being a doormat and letting people exploit you? I mean, if I do that in a corporate environment, I give away all my credit, I get passed over for promotions, and I might get fired for underperforming.
This is a very valid concern.
How does this philosophy survive the material reality of, paying rent?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it requires separating the material outcome from the psychological friction.
Okay, explain that.
The author is not writing a manual on corporate ladder climbing or wealth accumulation. They are outlining a manual for ultimate inner freedom.
So it's an internal metric?
Yes. Why does the selfish coworker infuriate you? Because you have a self that feels threatened.
But the threat is real. If I lose my job, I can't feed my family. The material consequences still exist.
Let's dig deeper into the mechanics of what the text is suggesting, though. No self does not mean inaction.
Okay.
It means action without attachment to the ego's rewards.
Yeah.
You still do the work, and you still produce the value.
But if the coworker takes the credit?
If the selfish coworker swoops in to take the superficial praise, what have they actually stolen?
I guess just the praise.
Right. They've taken the ego boost, but they haven't taken your experience of the work, your skills, or your intrinsic value. If your self is completely removed from the equation, there is no bruised ego to protect. The work gets done smoothly, the selfish person takes the hollow victory, and your inner peace remains entirely undisturbed.
I am still grappling with the corporate practicality of that, but I do understand the internal logic now. It's essentially rendering yourself immune to psychological damage by removing the target.
Exactly.
You can't assassinate an empty chair.
That is a very sharp way to frame it. And the author applies this same rigorous logic to an even more difficult scenario, caring for an unreasonable patient long-term.
Yeah, imagine someone who cannot care for themselves and treats you terribly in the process.
The text makes a bold claim here. It says that a person with a self couldn't bear that situation for 3 days.
Because the self calculates the injustice of it all.
Precisely. The ego sits there thinking, why is my life like this? Look at how much I'm sacrificing, and look at how poorly I am being treated in return.
But without a self, the text argues the labor transforms. The author uses a striking phrase, saying you will begin to appreciate a different kind of scenery in this world.
Which is profound.
It completely flips the script on how we understand burnout. Burnout isn't caused by the physical labor. Burnout is caused by the ego's constant resistance to the reality of the labor.
And this ties directly into the author's fascinating critique of the modern lying flat movement.
Oh yeah, the cultural movement of doing the absolute bare minimum to avoid societal pressure and stress.
Right. The text claims that even if you lie flat, if you still have a self, you will suffer.
It says that with a sense of self, even basic things like eating and sleeping become a burden.
Because the ego is fundamentally restless. It's a categorization machine designed to constantly want things to be different than they are.
So even resting is exhausting.
Exactly. Whether you are running a marathon or just staring at the ceiling, if the self is active, it will find a way to generate dissatisfaction.
Well, we've stress tested this philosophy in the bedroom, the laboratory, the office, and the hospital room.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Now, we arrive at what I think is the ultimate litmus test of the entire essay. The text presents a metaphor designed to test the absolute psychological limit of this philosophy.
Yes, and it is incredibly visceral.
The toilet water metaphor. So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Prepare yourself for this one.
The text poses a direct question. Would you clean toilets every day? And more specifically, would you dare to use the water from a perfectly clean toilet bowl to wash your face and brush your teeth?
It is deliberately designed to provoke an immediate feeling of revulsion.
My physical reaction is a hard no. My brain just screams that it is disgusting.
Let's break down the logic of that scream, though. Factually speaking, if a toilet is brand new, perfectly sterilized, and perfectly clean, the water sitting in the bowl is identical to the water flowing from your bathroom tap.
Chemically, there is zero difference.
But the mind insists that there is a massive difference.
It does, and that is the entire point of the exercise, isn't it? Where does that difference actually exist?
It doesn't exist in the water. The text states that there is no essential difference between cleaning a toilet and sweeping an emperor's seat.
This reminds me of a psychological thought experiment. It's exactly like refusing to drink out of a brand new sterile dog bowl.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
You can go to a pet store, buy a pristine stainless steel bowl, and run it through a dishwasher on the sanitized setting. It is immaculate.
Totally clean.
But if I pour tap water into it and offer it to you, your ego can't get past the label. The bowl is clean, but yourself says, I am a human being. I do not drink from dog bowls.
The label's what creates the disgust.
Exactly.
This raises an important question, and the text distills this perfectly into a profound principle. It says, having form is due to having a self.
Let's unpack that. What does having form mean in this specific context?
It means the self is a machine that needs arbitrary labels to define its own boundaries.
Like, it needs categories to survive.
Yes, it needs concepts like disgusting, prestigious, sacred, and profane to orient itself in the world.
It divides reality into things that elevate the ego, like the emperor's seat, and things that degrade the ego, like the toilet.
Exactly. Without the self to apply those labels, water is just water. A porcelain bowl is just a porcelain bowl.
The level of psychological freedom in that realization is really staggering.
It changes everything.
If you can mentally wash your face with that water without a single flicker of disgust, it means no label, no external judgment, and no arbitrary social hierarchy can ever degrade you again.
Because there is no you left to be degraded.
You have stepped out of the game entirely.
You become entirely untethered from the artificial hierarchies that cause so much human suffering.
Which brings us to the ultimate conclusion of the text. The author wraps up the essay by rapidly contrasting the two paths laid out before us, the path of the self and the path of selflessness.
It reads almost like a final verdict on the human condition.
Lay it out for us.
Well, the text states that with a self, life is a cruel competition. It is a constant battle and a struggle for profit.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. The author warns that this path moves you toward lower realms, filled with thorns, traps, and constant danger.
Because when you have a self to protect, everything around you is a potential threat. Every interaction is a risk.
Precisely. But contrast that with the alternative. Without a self, the text argues that life transforms into an interesting journey.
It becomes a fun game.
Yes. You move toward the higher realms, characterized by clear skies and bright prospects everywhere. The struggle simply evaporates because the entity that was fighting the battle no longer exists.
Let's bring this deep dive right back to your immediate reality.
It's good to ground this.
The next time you feel completely overwhelmed or you find yourself bogged down in a petty workplace rivalry, or you are just exhausted and feel like even doing nothing is stressful, pause for a second.
Just take a breath.
Ask yourself, is the situation itself actually unbearable, or is yourself demanding that reality be different?
Are you calculating your gains and losses instead of just flowing with the work?
It is about recognizing that the heavy armor you spent your whole life building to protect yourself is actually the cage that is keeping you trapped.
That's a beautiful way to summarize it.
We are going to leave you with one final unexplored line from the very end of the text to mull over on your own.
That's a great line.
It is a spatial metaphor that completely stopped me in my tracks. The author writes that with a self, one looks up at the world, but without a self, one looks down on the world.
It really makes you think.
If achieving this ultimate state of selflessness makes you look down on the world, does this advanced state of life fundamentally detach you from the very human connections that make up our reality?
Does it make you cold and aloof?
Or does losing yourself finally give you the ultimate vantage point, allowing you to step out of the maze, look down, and see the beauty of the whole puzzle from above?